Welcome to the Yes California Calexit Congress. We have a great show for you. Sam Chaney is going to be here, NICKOLAS WILDSTAR, and Robert Stark of Stark Truth TV talking about a variety of issues. And we have a progress update on the Yes California tokenized altcoin. I hope I'm saying that right. It's basically a Bitcoin or something with our logo on it, and an update on a new book designed to scare liberals into supporting secession. But let's get right into it. I want to thank you all for joining us here at the Yes California Calexit Congress, where we're having the most important conversation that Californians need to have, hosted live. Yes, live every Sunday at 11 a.m. We go live. We're getting better, and we're trying to make sure that you know about the issues that we're covering a week ahead of time. You can always join us live here every Sunday, this Sunday and every Sunday at 11. You can comment on YouTube, and you can join us on StreamYard. This is broadcast to the Yes California YouTube channel, where we ask you to subscribe and participate by typing in the comments. It feeds right in here to StreamYard. Plus, you can meet the actual panel members from the Calexit Congress that we have here. Okay, so getting right into it, keeping on agenda, I'm going to read the script, and I want to say thank you to Jason Wright. Big help helping me edit this script and making sure that everything was together. So, starting off today, the Calexit Congress is broadcast to 100,000 subscribers live on April 11th. Today, our show is going to be about, one second, and April 11th, we're doing an introduction by me, then we'll have presentations by Robert Stark. One second, we'll have a presentation by Robert Stark on Biden won't be able to bring unity to the USA at 11:10. Presentation by Governor candidate NICKOLAS WILDSTAR at 11:20. The USA court system is biased against civil justice. And a presentation by Sam Chaney at 11:40. The IMF is moving the USA dollar off as its main currency for the first time in history. Followed up by an update by Dewank Mahajan on the Yes creating an altcoin, Bitcoin. Finally, a edit update by Elliot Axman on Yes California publishing a book to scare liberals into supporting secession, and another update on the Yes California will release an online secession certification courses to the world coming up. So let me do the introduction, and then we'll get right to the show. Also, next week, we just booked this. Very pleased, Adam Kokesh will be here April 18th. Live here, April 18th, Adam Kokesh, and he will be talking about the Gardenia Sovereignty Project, aka how independence is an option to increase division. So great show today. Robert Stark, NICKOLAS WILDSTAR, Sam Chaney coming up. Robert Stark talking about Biden won't bring unity. NICKOLAS WILDSTAR talking about how the court system in America is not fair. Sam Chaney talking about how the dollar is going to be destroyed by the IMF real soon, plus some updates of publicity projects we have coming next week. Please join us. April 18th, my personal friend, big famous person, Adam Kokesh is talking about the Gardenia Sovereignty Project live here, April 18th at 11:15 a.m. Please join us for that. Getting right into it. Yes, California launched a strategic new direction after January 6th, 2021. For years, we had said that as leaders of the Calexit movement that you must believe in Calexit as the only solution. Now we have said, after the coup on January 6th, it is unreasonable for Californians to not be able to have a conversation about what if they have to go, because America is fundamentally broken and doesn't appear to ever be able to right itself. This is what we call the most important conversation that Californians can have. After January 6th, America appeared to be unstable. The capital was invaded in a way that we have not seen since the British 2 centuries ago. As we say, no one buys a home and doesn't buy home insurance. No one buys a boat and doesn't buy a life raft. Switching our narrative, we have experienced massive growth after the election of Joe Biden. Sorry, letting people in. YesCAL is pleased to announce to Californians that other famous and well-respected people of California have also come to literally the exact same conclusion as Yes California, completely separate from our movement. That's right. Other Californians are noticing what we have noticed and saying literally the exact same thing as we at here at Yes California. So first example, let's go to Cole Sternberg. So Cole Sternberg is the museum curator of the Free Republic of California Museum. This is the first museum exhibit ever in California history. It's in Los Angeles by a major museum firm. First museum exhibit ever talking about what if California was a nation. Cole Sternberg is not part of our movement. We've never met him. I don't even know he knows about us, but he's well connected. He's connected to the West Hollywood art scene, and they're literally already have an exhibit, and they're advertising it on Hollywood Boulevard to talk about California being a nation, completely independent of us. But on March 30th, here's what Cole Sternberg had to say. As if awoken from a spell, the rest of the United States has begun to see what many in West Hollywood already knew. The continued propagation of institutionalized inequality and violence and the insurrection at the Capitol laid bare the legality of our principles and republic. That's Cole Sternberg on March 30th saying, wow, the coup on January 6th made it look like America is not stable. By the way, the guy's running a museum exhibit on a future independent California. He's not alone. On January 8th, UC Berkeley had a presentation called Storming the Capitol. And this was by Professor John Powell. Now, John Powell has been a law professor at UC Berkeley. He teaches law at UC Berkeley. He's been a law professor in Minnesota, Ohio, Florida, and here. So multiple different American states. And on January 8th, in a presentation called Storming the Capitol at UC Berkeley, he said, the country is teetering, possibly broken at a structural level. He said that in return regarding the coup on January 6th. Finally, I'd like to introduce you to a third person that I've met. Darren McCurry, regular plain old Californian. I actually met Daniel yesterday by a fluke. I was trying to get a hold of another Calexit Congress member and I called Daniel by accident. Totally wrong number, regular average Californian. And he goes, I see you calling this number. Why do you call? What are you trying to talk about? What is this about? And I just told him I'm with Calexit. And I go, you remember Calexit? We almost seceded with Trump, a third of Californians report. And he goes, yeah. And I go, well, turns out, Darren, that after January 6th and the coup, a lot of people think that America's not stable and we might have to go. And so we're just trying to have a conversation about it. And he goes, makes sense. And then I go, especially after we also just saw Joe Biden place kids in cages and bump up the funding for the border wall. Two things we were told were racist when Donald Trump does it. Now Biden's doing both of those things. Does that sound stable to you? And he goes, no. And then Darren asked to be part of this Congress. So Darren McCurry, welcome. And that's the point. John Powell, Cole Sternberg, Darren McCurry do not know each other at all. Why is a UC Berkeley professor with no connection to the movement, a museum curator, and a random Californian I barely talked to on the phone out of a chance occurrence all saying the same thing? Literally exactly what we at Yes California did. Hey, there was a coup. You really think that place is going to hold together? And is it unreasonable for us to have a conversation about what if it doesn't? Now, but the hits keep coming. So I'd like to introduce you to another person who recently came out to support Calexit. So Adrian Lawrence, after going public in 2017 about the rampant sexual harassment, misogyny, and gender discrimination at her former employer, ESPN network, television networks, and subsequently becoming the first on-air personality to sue the sports network for sexual harassment, Adrian Lawrence became quite famous. Recently on a show, The Young Turks, who would be on the California dollar? On April 4th, Adrian Lawrence said, I'm ready to secede. And if we were to break away from the United States, I'd be down for that. Literally a quote at minute 4:35 to 4:45. That's a famous person backing secession. But the hits keep coming. So when we talk about how regular Californians are talking about how they support secession, when we talk about how Californians besides us are asking the question of what if America's unstable and we have to leave. So we have people promoting Calexit not tied to us. We have people asking the exact same question we're asking here, not tied to us. Maybe that means we're stumbling onto something here. And additionally, when we talk about the concept of what if we have to leave because America no longer works for California, more support keeps coming. So recently, the Supreme Court just struck down a law to prevent large gatherings for coronavirus pandemic. This is the second time the Supreme Court has struck down a law Californians passed to protect ourselves from not getting killed from coronavirus. So we said we don't want large gatherings because we think it'll spread the disease, and the Supreme Court struck that down and said, no, large gatherings will go ahead in California, even if you think it's going to kill people. Wow. Okay. Now, a lot of people also said, hey, Kamala Harris is a Californian. Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, these are Californians. Californians in Washington, D.C., new day, no reason to secede because so many Californians are in the federal system. To which I always responded, that's why we didn't get the stimulus checks in December. That's why Californians had to go homeless in December. They couldn't get stimulus checks in December or January. They had to wait till like February to get them. That's why the stimulus checks were not $2,000, they were $1,400, which doesn't even cover a month's rent. So Washington, D.C. is crawling with Californians, and you can't get a stimulus to back you out for 1 month's rent, most of California. And you can't even get the stimulus when you need it. But here's another thing. Katie Porter is a Californian. Katie Porter is a Californian. Katie Porter was known for calling out the big banks for not taking care of regular people. Katie Porter was blocked from the committee to ever be able to speak to banks again once the Democrats took over by Maxine Waters. So a Californian in Congress took out Katie Porter so she can no longer chastise banks about making sure they don't have services proper for Californians. That was done by a Californian. Nancy Pelosi did not come to her help. Kamala Harris did not come to her help. So you have a federal government, you can't get the stimulus checks when you need them, can't get them on time. And when you have Californians calling out people on the big banks, you get blocked by other Californians at the federal level. But let's take a look at Joe Biden. So Joe Biden recently told Russia that their leader is a killer. Now there are 120,000 Russian troops on the border ready for World War III. When Trump talked about loose talk with North Korea or Syria, people were jumping up and down about how you're going to cause World War III. Joe Biden literally did that. Just made an off-the-cuff remark, might have World War III now. Whoops. So, that's not good. Secondly, Joe Biden is going to begin construction of the border wall. When Donald Trump built the border wall, we were all told that's racist. Joe Biden's doing literally the same thing. Joe Biden also announced that he's going to be building the border wall while dealing with the controversy of continuing to place kids in cages. He also blocked reporters' access to those children, blocked the children from having showers, and they're still in the same concentrated environments as criticized before. Now, when Trump did that, that was racist. And when Trump built the border wall, that was racist. So what does it mean when Joe Biden does literally those two same things and blocks media access? Additionally, Joe Biden is engaging in partisan politics. Let's read you a quote. So Joe Biden, remember, is the decent American. Decency, soul of America, decency. Here's what a CEO said about Joe Biden's tax plan. Biden's made a lot of promises to do stuff differently, but he's engaging in partisan politics. And while it has a shinier veneer, it seems just like what Trump is doing. So, haphazardly getting America into World War III, doing racist stuff like kids in cages, blocking Latino children from lawyers, blocking Latino children from cleaning services, ordering the border wall, another racist thing, blocking access to the media, engaging in partisan politics, all that's exactly like Trump. All of it. And I was told, that's crazy. The guy is incompetent. He's going to start wars. He does racist things. He engages in partisan politics. Bad, 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 bad. Here's a return to decency. So my question to you is, This is the real America? Kids in cages? Border walls? Haphazardly stumbling into World War III? Blocking reporters, blocking access to showering facilities, engaging in partisan politics? Because we were told this is the decent America. So I guess this is what a decent, real America looks like, is Latinos treated like garbage on the border. And maybe getting into World War III and a military-industrial complex continuing. So there you go. Okay, well, thanks for being here. We're going to get started with our first presentations. So let's start with Robert Stark, and he's going to talk about how Joe Biden won't bring unity to America. Mr. Stark, are you with us? Could you talk for us?
Yeah.
Mr. Stark, please tell us what's going on. How come Joe Biden can't bring unity to America? What's that about?
Well, yeah, things started out like polarized from the very beginning, like the election, like with Trump alleging the election being stolen, and I don't really want to get into that so much. But then we had the riots on Capitol Hill, and some of the points about Biden's overall record. We can kind of summarize that: requesting like an increase in the Pentagon budget. That was pretty recent. Policies, strikes in Syria, not being opposed to withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, and kind of his letdowns on economics and student debt, and the economic handling of COVID, like not an adequate direct cash payout, but just focusing on bringing the nation together. It doesn't seem that he's made any effort whatsoever to bring about unity. Even when Biden did talk about unifying the nation, but his idea, like Biden's idea of unity, is like bringing in these like neocon GOP kind of never Trumpers from the old guard kind of Bush era GOP establishment. But no effort whatsoever in bringing about unity among the U.S. citizens. And it seems to be like from the worst of both ends, because like there's this like civil liberties crackdown and this domestic, like in the name of fighting domestic extremism. And whatever you think about whether domestic extremism is a serious threat or if you just think it's Democratic Party propaganda, regardless, it just shows like this force that he has to put in this he has to push for these draconian policies which go much further than the Patriot Act. It just fits into the narrative that the nation is so polarized, because that is like a sign. Those types of policies usually happen when a nation is fragmented. I mean, it's a stretch to say civil war, but it's symbolic of this polarization, because when one side views the other side as actually as that dangerous, and the right, that's just going to make polarization, because like Trump supporters literally think Biden wants to put them in jail and arrest them and surveil them because of their political views. So that's a very ugly, polarized situation. But then from the kind of left wing, from a progressive standpoint, he let down the kind of Bernie wing. They've been let down in economics. So it doesn't, there's just no unity whatsoever. His approval ratings, they're in the 40% range, which is it's not terrible for a new president, but just polarization is going to get much worse. And Biden or Kamala or no one really in the Biden admin or mainstream media has made any effort to try to bring about any kind of solution, whether it's in policy or even diplomacy. So yeah, polarization, it's just going to get much worse. And Biden has completely, it seems like he hasn't even made an effort to bring about unity. That's basically what I have to say. If anyone wants to ask any questions.
Yeah, I was going to turn it over to Congress. So any questions for Robert Stark? We'll take a few questions, and then we're going to go to Nicholas WildStar in a few minutes. We're going to go to Nicholas WildStar in a few minutes to talk about the justice system. But questions for Robert Stark on Biden and the ability to bring unity. Anybody in Congress, anybody on YouTube, if you're on YouTube, you can make a comment post. We'll feed it, post it here live for you. Or Congress members can type in the comments and we'll post it or speak. Anybody from Congress, questions to Robert Stark about unity in America?
Mine's not so much a question, just more of a kind of a comment that further points out, you know, the whole feel of what Robert just laid out here. Is that if you're like myself and you thought Senator Sanders had some really great ideas and that those ideas could like economically fix a lot of the troubles in the nation, right? Then you would be considered very far left. And when you compare that to Biden, you would fall very far left when compared to Biden. Biden would seem like a total right-winger, not somewhere in the middle. He would seem on your political spectrum in relation to yourself and your views. He would seem much more like Trump than I think even really Hillary Clinton would.
That's the thing with like polarization is I don't know if you call them like left wing or right wing, but because like with the way America is structured, both the left, like the Bernie supporters, and then a lot of the Trump supporters, both sides feel that none of their needs and political objectives have been met. So it's a kind of like under Biden, it's this weird kind of hybrid of the worst of both worlds under neoliberalism, where both progressives and the right side, neither of them basically get what they want, and it's just this kind of, I don't know if you call Biden like right wing or just kind of broadly like establishment corporate neoliberalism, but neither side is really getting what they want, and that just, I mean, maybe, and ideally they would work together, but I think the ideological differences would make things difficult for the anti-establishment right and left to work together. So it just further feeds polarization, and there's not really any kind of viable political movement on a nationwide level that offers any solution that would bring about unity. To both sides. So yeah, it just, as I said earlier, just polarization is just gonna get much worse.
All right, let me jump in real quick. We got a comment from Good Citizen News Ohio. Hello, everybody. Hello, Good Citizen News. We also got a comment to Robert from Lime Dragons. What's the comparison of Biden being at 40% versus where Trump was at the same time of his presidency? That's to Robert Stark from Lime Dragons. Please keep those comments coming in.
Yeah, I guess if I can answer that briefly, I don't remember what Trump's was. I think that does seem to be where Biden is. It's not terrible for as far as polling, as far as new presidents go, but he's still like early into his presidency, and even if his approval rating is something in the 40 range, he hasn't really done anything to address polarization, and his approval could likely be much lower by midterms. So yeah, but I would say by the midterm election, and especially by the next presidential election, I predict polarization could be worse than it is now, with other factors, the culture war and economic factors. But like one side, the kind of rhetoric where one side views the other side as literally the same way a nation would view like an enemy foreign power. That's the kind of like mentality that's being put forth in like when the Biden admin talks about like fighting the crackdown on liberties to fight domestic extremism.
All right, other questions for Robert Stark before we get to other questions for Robert Stark before we move on to Nicholas WildStar. Okay, one last comment. Let me post this up.
Oh, so Jason Wright posted he had 53% now and about 100% someone said 40%, and last time I checked, Biden was at 46, but that may have been about almost a month ago. So I'm not 100% sure what his approval rating is now, but that post says he's at 40%, which is, yeah, that is pretty bad.
Okay. Robert, closing comments on this topic?
Yeah, I think I basically summarized what I had to say that about my critique of Biden's policies and how he's not going to bring about any positive change from a right perspective. He's polarizing, but also from a progressive or left wing perspective, he's not going to bring about any positive change from what they wanted as an alternative to Trump. So Biden won't bring unity to the USA.
Thank you, Robert. That's Robert Stark with Stark Truth TV. You can see him here this Sunday and every Sunday live at 11 a.m. Let's go to Nicholas Wildstar. Nicholas Wildstar, you're a governor candidate. Are you here with us today, sir? Wow, look at that blazer. That is a nice looking jacket. Wow.
So much. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you.
Nicholas Wildstar is running for governor. He has his own YouTube channel. He's part of the network that broadcasts this show live every Sunday, live, where you can comment on YouTube and feed the comments in. We'll show them. Nick, you and I have had a couple conversations, if I may, about the justice system in the US of A, specifically looking at George Floyd. Now, a lot of people are focused on Mr. Floyd himself, but what you educated me on, I was particularly ignorant about, was the real show is not what happened to Floyd. It's the court system trying to bring a lack of justice. Am I summarizing that correctly? Could you walk us through this topic? And by the way, Nick, if you put any comments in the chat here, I can post them up online and show that live. So you tell me what you want me to show. Just post it in the comments here and I'll post it. But what's going on, Nick? What do you mean by the American justice system doesn't in fact provide justice or equality?
You got it. Well, first, I want to let everybody know that I'm not an expert on this situation, so don't take anything that I'm saying as legal or professional advice. It's simply just information that I'm providing to you guys based on firsthand experience and a little bit of research, of course. But what's going on with the Chauvin trial is definitely a display of the American justice system. There's correlations between what's going on with the trial and what I myself have recently experienced through my own trial for recording in court. If you guys haven't heard, I was recently prosecuted by the Orange County District Attorney's Office for recording in court, which is a constitutionally protected right under the First Amendment, since we have the right to, freedom of press, and the Sixth Amendment, which guarantees us a right to a fair and public keyword there, trial. Now, with the Chauvin trial, you're seeing that it's public because it's being broadcast live on YouTube. So that tells you right there that everything that happens in our courtrooms throughout the country should be made available to we the people. Now, it's sad that it took a pandemic to put our criminal justice system in a position to where it finally made the transition to now broadcast all public court proceedings publicly. But that's where we are now. But before this happened, I was recording in court my own traffic court cases and was found in contempt of court since a judge told me that that I was in contempt for not obeying court rules. Rules are not laws. We the people pass laws by way of legislators and support those laws because we vote for them. A court rule is something that's created by court officials, and in this case, it's a justice of the court, judicial official, basically saying what they want. So any law enforcement official, when they tell you to do something, that is called an lawful order, okay? This is their terminology that they use, the legalese in the legal system, to say, again, when a public official tells you to do something, you must do it. You must comply. Recently, I was talking with Marcus, and we were going over some of the details of the Chauvin trial, and I pointed out a video to him about how the judge was basically attacking a juror, a witness that was on the stand providing their testimony. So I want to show you guys that short clip, if I may, just to kind of give you guys a bit of a frame of reference. I'm gonna do my best to kind of run through as much of this as possible. So thankfully it's on the record so you guys can check it out later. But let me see if I can share my screen. I should be able to.
Can you share from your end or, oh, there it is. Okay.
Perfect. All right.
Nice.
So here's the video right here, you guys. I'm gonna just play it for you quickly so you can see.
I know you don't want to look at your transcript, but may I approach the witness? Ms. Hanson, counsel, page 8285, page 11 of 28. I'm just going to ask you to read underline portions in your head.
Some audio issues.
Are you able to hear it?
No, maybe send me the link, but we can talk about it. You and I both saw this. We can.
Please,
I'll get the link out to everybody and I'll post it up.
You can't hear that at all?
We can hear the lawyers. We can't hear her speak. So I can hear the lawyers giving her instructions, but I can't hear her actual words.
All right. Let me let it play out. Hopefully
Okay.
you'll be able to hear this last part.
We can cover. We're also going to cover what she said, folks. This is just proving to you it actually happened, just how Nick is saying.
This is the most important part right here that I want you guys to see.
Kylie, we're working on it. Thank you, Kylie Dooley.
Can you hear now?
We're outside the hearing of the jury, Ms. Hanson. I'm advising you
Yes.
not argue with counsel,
All right.
and specifically, do not argue with the court.
Is the
I will-
cameras on? Are the cameras on?
I'll rewind it a little bit. Can you take away that banner, Marcus, so
Yep.
they can see the subtitles?
Yep.
No, the one at the bottom, Nicholas Wildstar. Thank you.
Give us a second, folks. This is worth it. This is hot stuff. It's worth it. You're going to see why we're spending so much time on this one few seconds of what this firefighter says in the courtroom where the Chauvin case is being handled.
We're outside the hearing of the jury, Ms. Hanson. I'm advising you, do not argue with counsel, and specifically, do not argue with the court.
Is the
I will-
cameras on? Are the cameras on?
No, they are not. We are on the record.
Okay.
You will not argue with the court. You will not argue with counsel.
Mm-hmm.
They have the right to ask questions. Your job is to answer them.
I was finishing my answer.
I will determine when your answer is done.
Okay, well,
And so, do not argue with the court. Do not argue with counsel. Answer the questions. Do not volunteer information that is not requested. The attorneys for the state have redirect. They can ask you questions if they think that certain things were left out. It is counsel's prerogative to ask you leading questions and for you to answer those and not volunteer additional information.
okay,
Are we clear on this?
okay.
Thank you. Come back tomorrow at 9.
All right. So I'll pause it there. So the reason why I showed you guys this small portion of the entire trial is because it tells you the tone of the courtroom and the desires of the legal system. He's putting himself in a position to tell her. You can see his demeanor. At first, he was kind of relaxed, but then when she started to speak back to him, I guess in a disrespectful manner, he assumed, he shifted his weight and turned towards her. What he's saying to her during this time is basically, do what I tell you to, and you're going to behave in the courtroom as I say. Because I guess during her testimony, she had volunteered more information than the judge would have liked. Now, instead of saying, you know, that's unnecessary, or thank you, ma'am, you're all done, he instead went to define, again, certain protocol that is demanded by the courtroom. She also asks him, are the cameras off? Are the cameras still on? He says, no, the cameras are off, but we're still on a record. Why does it matter if the cameras are still on? Because the public is watching. He's thinking that all of this is off camera right now, but it's still being on the record. So we, the people, are getting to see how our law enforcement officials, including judges, not only police officers, are on display here with this trial, but also, as I said, the American justice system. And this judge in particular is influencing the witness by saying, I will tell you what the testimony is, and then saying certain things to her in a way to where, if the cameras had have been on, assumably, he probably would have behaved different. That's what I've learned during our court system was, or during my own trial, was they expect us to behave a certain way. They don't see themselves as employees of we the people. So we have to respect them. They don't have to respect us. They get to treat us like we're subordinates. And basically, again, are able to determine how we should be behaving ourselves. This should be appalling to the people of California because, as I said, it's not only happening right here with this trial. I've experienced myself. I'm pretty sure lots of people that have been to, court have experienced the same thing. Just a lack of respect by people we employ with our tax dollars to provide a service to us. When we talk about secession in the United States, a lot of people only think about the Civil War, that being the catalyst of, states wanting to separate. There were other secessionist movements before. There were even some after. And believe it or not, some of the ones after had to do with the expansion of the Bar Association, which was not a requirement. It's not a requirement for you to be a bar affiliate, a bar approved attorney to be in court. But if you do so, it's called, pro persona. You're representing yourself in court. It's very difficult to do. They don't take you seriously. Again, they're using a different language. It's called legalese in the court system. So the wording, everything that's said has a different meaning than what we would use in every day-to-day life. So look up the history of the American Civil War. I have that information for you here as well. Let me bring it up. Marcus, if you could. All right.
Thank you to Kylie and David Thimmel and Kylie Dooley. Keep those comments coming. Back to you, Nick.
Yes, please. I got a few more minutes and then I'm going to wrap it up, and I'll put these links in the chat box for you guys to see. But just look up American Civil War. It started between 1861 and 65. The American secessionist movement started in about 1860 after Abraham Lincoln was elected. Okay. The reason why I bring this up is because we can come together to create what's called a common law grand jury and make a stand for the legal system as people of the state. And we would actually supersede the authority of our criminal justice system here in the state, as well as the entire country. Justice Scalia, one of the former Supreme Court justices, he actually made a comment regarding the common law grand jury. I'll read it to you here, if I may, really briefly. He says, Justice Scalia's primary concern in this essay is the lack of coherent philosophy of judicial decision-making within law schools, the academy, and on the bench. He begins by examining the dual function of common law courts applying the law to the facts and making law. Justice Scalia argues that although our law has evolved away from common law into a statutory legal system, that's what we have right now, a statutory legal system, our legal approaches remain the same. It's different. The way we should be approaching common law cases should be separate from statutory law cases, which is everything else: penal codes, traffic codes, health and safety codes. All of those codes are called statutory law. Right now, Justice Scalia, Supreme Court judge, is telling you they're being approached and dealt with in the same capacity. Okay? Common law is what we know, common knowledge. You know, don't hurt others, don't steal from others, don't lie to others. That's called common law. So if you violate common law, you have a judge that plays a neutral party, and you and the one that's harmed is supposed to be there to argue the issues of this in court. It's not right now. Consequently, I'll continue. Consequently, law schools and judges have continued to focus on such decision-making tools as precedent and distinguishing cases. For Scalia, a democratic system which places the common law power for creating law into the hands of unelected judges is problematic. This is very important, because when you have a Supreme Court judge saying that a common law grand jury has more authority than the Supreme Court of the United States of America, that tells you that we ultimately have more power and more authority than our elected officials. Here's a website you guys should check out. It's called nationallibertyalliance.org. They actually break down a lot of information as to how we could create a common law grand jury to hold our elected officials accountable, as well as creating a constitutional sheriff's department. So when our law enforcement officers do not behave according to the law, we have our constitutional sheriffs that can go in and make sure the law is enforced according to the United States Constitution.
I'm sorry. If we could, the topic today was, how is the justice system on display with Floyd not representative of justice? You're getting a lot of good comments. If we could gently weave it back into that.
Sure. Well, the reason why I'm proposing the idea of supporting a common law grand jury is because what's going to happen with the outcome of this trial should worry the people of California. I pay attention to right-wing groups and different organizations, and all the Blue Lives Matter group and Back to Blue, and they're already fearing protests from Black Lives Matter and eruption of civil disobedience if this cop gets off. So if Derek Chauvin is found not guilty, which is a high possibility, it's going to cause chaos throughout the country when it comes to civil unrest and people being upset about it. Will it affect California? Definitely, because when the killing of George Floyd happened, there were protests here in California that became violent. We don't want that to happen. So it's very important that we put ourselves in a position to where we can fortify ourselves from from national policies that affect people of California. And with the ending of this trial nearing, and possibly a few weeks, we have to make sure that we're letting, if YesCalifornia gets on board with stepping out in front of this, we can let the people of California know, hey, there's a better way of changing our legal system here in the state so that won't happen to us. And so don't go out, riot, hurt people. You see what I'm saying? What is it? Destroy property. There's a better way. There's a more civil way. There's a more peaceful way of achieving justice in our country, or else people are going to only consider vigilante justice and take the law into their own hands. So that's the reason why I bring up the creation of a common law grand jury, and I'm asking the people of YesCalifornia to consider this idea, to again look at the Chauvin trial as a catalyst of reasoning for that.
Okay.
I hope I got it all together.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to turn it to questions. You can comment in YouTube, and we will post the comments here. We have some people commenting. If you'd like to ask questions to Governor candidate Nicholas Wildstar, who experienced injustice in the Orange County court system and is talking about injustice in the American court system, please comment now. I'm going to turn it over to Congress members. Anybody in Congress have any questions on this? And basically the topic is this. George Floyd was murdered on TV. You can have this and that. But here's the issue. Here's the court case. Here's a firefighter. I see you, Professor. We'll go to you in 1 second. We'll go to Professor Williams in a second. Here's a firefighter. She was standing there when George is being killed, and she's saying, I'm a paramedic. I can save people's lives. Let me save this guy's life. I'm a trained firefighter. I work with the cops. I work with the courts. I love you guys. Let me save this guy's life. No, stay over there, ma'am. And he died.
Right.
And then what she's saying is in court was, I said that. I was standing there. I know CPR. I could have maybe saved his life. I asked to do that. They said no. And in the trial, she mentions that when asked. And then the judge reprimands her for her answer because it makes the cop look bad. And so this is the judge basically insinuating I'm running this court case and it's going to look like a certain way, and reprimanding the firefighter for offering information that helps the defense when she's totally within her right to do that. Additionally, in court cases, when you say something and they don't want it, they go strike that from the record. He didn't do any of that. Rather, he reprimanded her and lined her up and said, you're on our team and you better behave. And that's why she's like, are the cameras on? Are the cameras on? Is anybody going to see this?
Mm-hmm.
She was worried about being intimidated by a judge. A firefighter works for the government, intimidated by the judge, who's supposed to be the lady, blind, no opinions, clearly is biased. And this is the court case that's going to determine if Officer Chauvin did something wrong. Clearly a biased system. Clearly not blind justice and a seek for the truth. Professor Williams, comment to Nicholas Wildstar on the USA court system not pursuing civil rights for George Floyd.
The Floyd case is just one example of many examples of how flawed the United States criminal justice system is overall. And it is corrupt from top to bottom. It is injustice quite often, and it focuses on imprisoning the powerless in the interests of those who are powerful and in control of the system. And I think that we just need to look at this not being surprised, because that's what the system typically does. It is ringed with requirements that keep a regular person from being able to conduct their own defense. It is a system set up for the benefit of the employees of the court system, including the lawyers that must be paid, and they have public defenders that are completely overwhelmed and underfunded, and the prosecutors, whereas in other countries, government prosecutors are responsible for both prosecuting crimes and defending defendants. In the United States Justice Department, they only do prosecutions. So they're not even familiar with defending people, and they get their paychecks and their promotions based on what their percentages of guilty verdicts they bring about. And so this creates an incentive for them to pursue any kind of case that is possible to get a guilty verdict on. What we have in the United States is not really a criminal justice system. What we have is a plea deal system, because over 95% of all federal cases end up in a plea deal. And they use these very harsh sentences, much harsher than most other countries, and use them to intimidate prisoners into conducting a plea deal. And it has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. It has nothing to do with justice. It is completely corrupt. If a prisoner, a person who is incarcerated, tries to sue the government because of these unfair things, it's almost impossible to get a successful suit. Everything is weighted toward the advantages of the government. So we can see this from top to bottom, from the actions of police to the actions of the courts, to the actions of the Bureau of Prisons, to the court systems that are supposed to be overseeing these kinds of things. It is not a model that we should follow in an independent California. This is something that the outlier in world justice systems is the United States. It is not typical of the way justice occurs in most other countries. And if we're going to have a model here, it should not be the American criminal justice system. It should be looking at the justice systems of countries like Finland, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands. All have superior court systems that are designed more for justice instead of trying to imprison people for as many years as possible and as many people as possible. And that's the incentives in the system as it exists in the United States are completely for those purposes rather than for justice per se.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Any other comments from anyone? To Nicholas WildStar. Thank you, Professor Williams. Very insightful. Professor Williams has been studying justice in America for decades, certainly a source. Any other comments on the Derek Chauvin court case and how it shows a lack of justice in the American court system? We can take comments from YouTube, or anyone in Congress can speak.
I'd just like to say to gubernatorial candidate WildStar that as one of your supporters and advisors on policy and such, if you do get into office, I got all sorts of stuff that I have already pulled from countries that Professor Williams has just mentioned, like Finland. I've even actually got members of parliament to translate it for me when it's not typically provided in English. My Finnish isn't that good, so they translated it for me. So I've got some real comprehensive stuff for when we are ready to tackle some of these issues. We've got a great place to use as an example.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that Finnish police video with me the other day. Very interesting.
Yeah, right. You know, a man sells a cigarette and gets killed here in America.
Right.
The dude riding around half naked, literally refusing to stop for the police, obviously intoxicated, and they just laugh it off. They're like, okay, well,
right,
he's not hurting anyone, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments on specifically the injustice of the American court system that we're seeing with the Derek Chauvin court case? Specific comments to that from anyone in Congress or anyone in YouTube?
And thank you for summarizing, Marcus. I appreciate it.
I have to do it because a lot of people watch our videos and they want to, you know, people like to hear X and then you go on. So now we're going to have Sam Chaney coming up in a second. Sam Chaney's coming up here in a second for the IMF is moving off the US dollar for the first time coming up. But any other comments about this? Because for me, this is very illuminating and critical. We're literally seeing the judge show bias in the court case that's going to define if America's has a racist or not racist justice system. I mean, this is the most highest profile African-American man killed by the police after years of BLM protesting. All eyes are on this. And we just saw the judge not be a dispassionate arbiter. So that says a lot to me already. In my opinion, I would ask for mistrial because of bias, but that's just me. Any of their comments on what we saw and how shocking it is to you? Anyone else for Nicholas Wildstar? Professor Williams.
One other point, comparison. In Germany, the average time that police fire their weapons is, I think the last recorded statistic I saw in Germany, it was 52 times in the entire nation of Germany that police fired a weapon. In the United States, contrastingly, every year it's around 1,000 people are killed by police. That doesn't even go into how many times they are shooting people in the back, shooting unarmed people in the back, shooting people that they know have mental illnesses that they're familiar with, people who are running away. That's been documented over and over again. This is a system that is entirely out of control. And that is why we have 4% of the world's population in the United States, but over 20% of the world's prisoners. And the entire system is set up to incarcerate, to get the maximum number of people in under their power, and it is hardly democratic or democratic based. It has a long history of racism, a long history of discrimination against poor people, a long history of focusing on the powerless, while those in power or who are powerful manage to go free. So it is not a justice system in the least.
All right.
I got one more thing to point out to everyone, and that's that we shouldn't all be too shocked by this, lest we forget Brock Turner literally caught in the act of violently raping someone that he had drugged. And the judge said, oh, you know, I don't want to destroy this kid's life. I mean, why go so hard on him? So, and you know, that was also fairly recent, right? So don't be too surprised. It's yet another case.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone else? Okay, Nick, last comments about this section before we go to Sam Chaney on the future of the dollar.
No, I just thank you all for your time. I apologize for going over my time, and I apologize to Sam Chaney.
No. I got it all scheduled. This was a great topic. I mean, Nick, you had people commenting on your passion. Wildstars on passion says Kaylee Dooley says you are so correct. Please teach. You got David Thimmel saying this guy's a tyrant. So that was a good section. He really blew it up well, and I was proud to be in. Before we go to Sam Chaney, I do want to show this one last thing. This comes to us from Christine Howard-Ishmawi, another Calexit Congress member. She sent me this comment, so I'm going to show that real quick. Oops, wrong button. 1 second. Okay. So this apparently happened today or yesterday. The police pulled over a U.S. Army officer who was black and Latino and violently pulled him out of his car when he was showing his hands. He's a decorated officer. He's wearing the uniform. He was explaining that to him, and apparently it didn't go very well, and now he's going to sue them. Here are some pictures. Here we can see the cops pointing their guns at him. Both police officers. Here's the man looking dismayed. He's fought for the country, and this is how he's treated in his return. Here's his hands being shown. There's the man that's a look of terror in his eyes, if you can see, with his hands being shown. Additionally more, this is already getting international global coverage. So there's the gun clearly being pointed at him and by the police, and there's his face. You can see the tears coming. So that literally happened while we're talking about this. So we'll leave it there. Thank you. We'll keep going. One more comment. That's California. All right. He's also, okay. And yes, California, thank you. All right, thank you, Nicholas Wildstar. Really appreciate it. We're going to go to our next section where we keep discussing how the USA is not working out, just in case we might actually have to leave one day. Hey, Cambees, what's up? What's up? What's up?
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Great, great, great. You're just in time. We're going to talk about how the USA dollar might be falling and California might have to get off of that. Now we're going to go to Sam Chaney. Sam Chaney has long studied this subject. What's known as the International Monetary Fund is essentially the central bank. And they have something known as the special drawing rights, SDRs. You may hear IMF SDR. What that is basically the global currency option other than the US dollar. Now, for a while, the SDR was a tiny amount of currency being out there, and it was kind of linked to the dollar. But recently, something dramatic has happened. Something that changes the order of money, not seen since 1945 with the creation of the IMF, the World Bank, and the Bretton Woods Conference. Sam, what happened recently, and what does that mean about the long-term strength of the U.S. dollar, and why is this relevant for us here at Calexit? Sam Chaney.
Hey guys, how you doing? So if you like the corruption of our judicial system, you're going to really love the corruption of our monetary system.
Right.
And as we talked about, well, yeah, the government's totally corrupt. It's beyond any debate at this point. It's plain as day for everyone to see everywhere you look. Corruption is destroying the United States from within, and that's a big part of why we have to have these talks about a sovereign California, because obviously the federal government and many other state government, our own state government here, it's just beyond repair, I think, at this point. And but at the bottom of it all here, because I know the judicial system, the racism and all this, that's emotional and it's wrong and corrupt. But now down to this issue of the dollar affects everyone. It doesn't matter your race, color, religion. If you're in America and doing transactions with US dollars, as we talked about last week, they're increasing the money supply. That's our Federal Reserve now. With all these bailouts, we've seen $12 trillion added to the money supply over the last 18 months. Okay, so that's a debasement of our currency, and it's causing prices to go up. We're seeing it at the gas pump. We're seeing it at your grocery store with food. We're seeing it in lumber. We're seeing it across the board in commodities. Okay, and they're suppressing the real inflation by pumping a lot of money into the stock market, which is artificially inflated right now, because you can't match up the stock market with Main Street. Wall Street and Main Street are so far more disconnected than they've ever been. Okay. Now, how does this tie into the IMF? Well, all the international bankers saw this coming. The International Monetary Fund saw this coming about 18 months ago. And we had the Bank of England head, Mark Carney, say that the petrodollar's over in August of 2019. And so that's prepping the world to phase out of the dollar as the world reserve currency. And what does that mean for us, dependent as the dollar as our means of exchange here in America? It means that our standard of living is going to massively decrease because the value of our dollar, when it's no longer accepted as the world reserve currency, will plummet. And so we see that they're slowly doing it now. We saw the statement from the Bank of England head, and we see, as Margaret said at the beginning of the introduction of this section, the IMF is now issuing its own standard drawing rights to use as bailouts for other countries rather than the Federal Reserve note, the dollar. And so it's kind of complex, but I want to simplify it. They're creating, we already have one fiat debt-based monetary system, the dollar, and they're creating a second tier of that now with these special drawing rights. I know your eyes are going to glaze over because mine do a little bit too, and I'm even into studying economics. But the bottom line point is that we here in California can see the writing on the wall. The bankers are telling us we're switching up systems now. The world is going away through de-dollarization, away from the Federal Reserve notes, the dollar, and they're going into another form of currency transfer, because it used to be, right, that you had to, all of the countries, Russia, China, major world powers had to make exchanges in dollars to buy oil. All that's going away now, and they're phasing it out slowly, and now it's picking up steam. So us here in sovereign California, if we want to be an independent sovereign nation, we need to come up with a solution that's not tied to the dollar as our monetary system here, or else we're going to go down with the rest of America, and our standard of living is going to massively decrease, as we see the banks telling us they're doing. Marcus?
Let's go to some comments.
I hope too many people's eyes didn't glaze over there and it made sense.
I'm already gonna, Camby's, can I pick on you because I saw your eyes getting big and you were doing a lot of this while Sam was nodding. Is Sam right? Is he way off base? Do you know what he's talking about?
Yes.
Camby's going crazy today. What's going on?
Sure. SDRs have existed for a long time, and they were created in Switzerland. It was created as a way to obviously facilitate international transactions. If maybe 20 years ago when they used to print out plane tickets, if you looked inside your plane ticket, it said if you lost your luggage, you would be paid in SDRs. You were paid in strategic drawing rights. Yes, the world is moving away from the dollar. It's moving to the euro.
A key point on the special drawing rights were valued in dollars, and my point is they're no longer valued in dollars. The IMF is creating its own fiat currency, not tied to the dollar, is the bottom line point of it, and that's historical in the international monetary system now, because it's never happened before, and it's a key indicator that the bankers are moving away from the dollar as the world reserve currency. That's the key point I wanted to make.
Right, absolutely. They're moving away from the dollar and they're moving toward the euro. The euro is much more stable. The Chinese, the Russians, Iran, they deal either with gold or they deal with euro. That's the best way to do it. Gold, people they moved away from gold. Everyone went toward the paper currencies. Now they're looking back at gold again, because gold still has that international appeal. All the central banks, the majority of their holdings is still in bullion gold, and it's still going to have that value and maintain its value. But if we want to apply what we're talking about to our own Congress, it has to be creating our own currency that could be like the altcoin you were talking about. Create our own cryptocurrency. Look, what did the Continental Congress do when they wanted to create their own? When they needed funding, they created a lottery. That's what the Continental Congress did. This Congress, this California Congress, what it should be doing is creating its own currency and using that currency to be able to raise, the resources to be able to do what we need to do.
So, Camby's, you agree with Sam's analysis? I just want to make sure we're getting two different Congress members who are saying, yep, the world used to be backed on the U.S. dollar, and now international trade in key parts is pulling away from the dollar, and that has game-changing implications for the strength of the U.S. dollar. Camby's and Sam, you're both saying that? Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yes, and the more that every nation that pulls away from the dollar puts itself in the position of being invaded. Any country that puts itself in the position of saying, hey, I don't want your dollar anymore, puts itself in the way of either being invaded or its government being overthrown or upheaval on the streets or some color revolution or some nonsense like that. It's because they have to maintain their dominance through the dollar. And once they lose that dominance, then their only thing left is to invade.
You're saying the U.S. dollar is backed by threats of violence and bases around the world, and saying you better use our U.S. dollar or we'll overthrow your government. Is that
Military, the invasion is what gives the dollar its value. As long as countries maintain the dollar, the U.S. is good with them. Once you go off the dollar, you become the enemy of the United States.
I just find it interesting because we had TJ Shelton and I think Sam or a few other Congress members a few days ago said it's horrible that the American dollar is basically inflated in value and based on threats of intimidation and violence. You have these bases all over the world. You have routine talking about regime change. You have America's the only country that basically overthrows whole governments. Yes, I understand Russia invaded Ukraine, but it did not overthrow Ukraine. America's toppled at least 3 governments, Honduras, Iraq, and Libya recently. So it's in a class by itself. And it's just interesting to hear the conversation pop up again with Californians of, that is disgusting that your currency is inflated in value and based upon threats of killing people.
Yes.
Wow. Sam,
I
response.
have a question.
Yeah, Jason Wright. Jump in.
So I'm not like top economist or anything. So this one really is like a question to see if there's DeWonk. Hey DeWonk.
DeWonk just back
my question is mainly seeing if I have this right, if I'm understanding this. So the United States is kind of a debt generation system, right? Where we hand out debt left and right to then generate potentially more money in the future off of that, as it goes along. If the world starts pulling away from supporting the dollar and the dollar gets more and more weak, then technically wouldn't the United States, if it didn't radically change its approach with the whole, free debt for everyone, if they didn't change that policy, wouldn't it just kind of bankrupt the whole place? Like, maybe not literally overnight, but in a week or two, it would be pretty much the end of it, right?
The U.S. doesn't have any money to begin with. The reason why it has to continue the whole Ponzi scheme that it does is because it doesn't have money. Look at the nations that control the United States debt. The number 1 nation that controls the United States debt, China. Number 2 is Japan, right? When Japan bought up all the debt of the United States in the 1980s, what were they saying? Japan is the greatest threat to the United States. Look at all the movies from the 1980s. Japan was the greatest threat. Now look at today. China today is the greatest threat. Why? Because they control the most debt. They control all the treasury bonds. As long as these countries keep buying the treasury bonds, everything's okay. And they can maintain that Ponzi scheme.
Sam, weigh in, please. Camby's great response. Jason, thanks for asking questions. Everybody, please keep those comments coming on YouTube or join in right here. Sam Chaney.
Well, what he said is correct about demonizing foreign countries that hold the debt as the enemy, because they are the enemy of the central bankers, but not of the people of the California and the United States. You see, the bottom line is we need to get rid of the private central banking cartel that's running our monetary system, because it's debt based, so it's designed. My kid's over here, he's mad about it too. How you doing, Adam? So until we can dissolve the central bank and go and have the Treasury issue us our currency and credit, how it says in the Constitution, then we'll never get out of this mess, and we'll be in a perpetual cycle of debt and war. And that's what California could do, is have our state Treasury Department, or it would be our national, if we were our own nation, actually issue the money debt-free to the people based on a sound money principle, which would be having the money backed up by, as was mentioned earlier, gold, silver, lumber. We have a lot of natural resources that have intrinsic value that can back a currency issued by the Treasury Department, rather than have a debt-based system, which we see now only leads to war and bankruptcy.
That's right. The true value of a conflict is in the debt that is generated, and that's all they care about. Generate debt.
Wow. Wow. Really informed, Camby's most Nafisa Day, Sam, Cheney, Jason, thanks for the comments. Any other comments to Sam or Camby's about the dollar? And it's coming to an end. Professor Williams.
I have a question. If there came a crisis, financial or otherwise, would Californians be able, instead of sending their annual income tax to the federal government, would they be able to simply make a check to the California Tax Franchise Board? Is that a possibility if a crisis came to the head where the U.S. government was basically not functioning?
Well, it's been said many times, individual income tax is voluntary, but I would not recommend anyone at this point in time not pay your individual income taxes, because eventually a man with a gun from the IRS will show up at your house and use that corrupt judicial system against you to enforce their tax code.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
It's illegal at this moment, but you bring up a good point. What if the U.S. is collapsing? What if the dollar isn't of any value?
I'd say that's up to the individual taxpayer to make that decision.
I will point out that with coronavirus, people had never thought of let's block the borders from fellow Americans coming in. And when coronavirus came and they were talking about body bags, Governor Newsom suggested that, and a lot of Californians quickly jumped to, seize the border and close it off, which is unconstitutional. So when Californians get scared, they quickly jump to unconstitutional measures. And what you're suggesting, while technically illegal, might be something they look at if they're actually dealing with the reality where the dollar's collapsed. I want to say thank you to
I wanted to comment on Professor Williams.
Please.
I want to comment on Professor Williams's question, and I think the franchise tax board, especially the California one, is probably the biggest or one of the.
Give him a second. We got some bandwidth issues. Like many of our members, he's overseas. All right, we'll come back to Camby's when he comes back in. Sam, would you like to comment on the professor's question, knowing that as soon as Camby's comes back, we'll defer to him?
My kid's fired up about it. I don't know. Yeah.
She knows it's an issue.
Like I said, the bottom line fundamental of the system is it's morally corrupt, debt-based monetary system. So, I mean, until we get rid of that, then we're just going to, like I said before, have bankruptcy and war. And the state is tied to the dollar, so it doesn't really matter until we can uncouple from the Federal Reserve notes, the U.S. dollar. Then, I mean, it's really pointless to have this discussion. Honestly, is my position on the matter. The dollar, the Federal Reserve note, in and of itself, is immoral because it's debt based.
Can be
fiat.
Sure. I wanted to get permission from Marcus. I wanted to get permission to talk about a subject, but tell me when I talk about it. I don't want to bring it up yet, but tell me when I can jump in and talk about it. It's about something about AOC and the Capitol Police. I don't know if you know about it, but
yeah,
we'll continue with your agenda. Just let me know when.
Yeah, no, we'll go ahead and take a pause in the subject of the IMF and the dollar.
Real quick, Marcus, just let me say, Okay, the bankers are telling us that they're going away from the dollar. We see the writing on the wall here. So it's up to you as the individual to prepare yourself and your family the best way you can. I would say get ready for your standard of living to go down massively in a very short period of time. Take this time that we have now to prepare, and that's what I'm warning people to do. And you'll be a lot better off in the very near future for doing so, I believe. Thank you.
Prepare how? What specific things would you suggest?
To prepare, the number one thing I would say, have clean water. Have a water filter. Have access to water. Okay? Just fundamental stuff. Clean drinking water. Get a water filter. Number two, get some storable food. Can your food. So think about if the economy does collapse, how can you make it on your own? Can you work with our group here, a coalition of people, rather than having to go out and commit crimes and rob people to eat and feed your family? Is it going to get that bad? I don't know. It has in other countries. You know, I mean, take a look at Venezuela as one example. Their currency collapsed, and it's bad. It's very bad. So we have the time now to go ahead. My kids are fired up over here, but we have the time now, a little bit of time before this actually happens, to prepare and put yourself in a position that is that's not going to leave you reliant on the failed system.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to go to Camby's most of these today. Sam, thank you so much for covering the topic, and it's nice to see the youth getting involved in politics at such an early age. Camby's, quick update. What did you hear? What's going on?
What happened is an individual, I think they're in California, I'm not sure, and their Twitter, I think their Twitter handle is queer a la mode. And they wrote, or they posted a video. They posted a video that was a little bit critical of AOC. Okay, this gentleman lives in Los Angeles, and the Capitol Police was contacted. The Capitol Police contacted California Highway Patrol. 2 California Highway Patrol officers showed up at this guy's house in Los Angeles and threatened him for a tweet he wrote on Twitter about AOC. So I just wanted to bring it up that the federalization of police is happening. Not only the militarization of police, but more importantly, the federalization of police. You shouldn't be scared of police that live down the street from you, okay? Local police are not scary. Federal police are scary because they work together to intimidate for political purpose. Whereas local police, catches a criminal, catches a thief, catches a shoplifter. You know the local police, they live in your neighborhood. You shouldn't be scared of local police. The founding fathers were not scared of local police. You should be scared of the federalization of police. And not only Obama, look, Obama did what? St. Louis, Missouri, right? The militarization of police, right? The militarization of police and the federalization of police are going in hand. You don't want a federal police force. That's what, when you have a federal police force, that's when you get customs and border patrol agents, and you get Blackwater mercenaries in Portland, okay? You don't want things like that happening, okay? You want to stop the federalization of police, and this is a very dangerous trend. So, it's not about be careful, it's, have full transparency. Hey, I have nothing to hide. This is what it is. This is what we're talking about. Okay. This is what we want to do with California. Everything's out in the open. Everything's being videotaped. Nothing's hidden, right? Full transparency. And that's what it's about with the Yes movement. It has to be complete, full transparency. So everything, right? is so legitimate that we can get those major players to come join us, those police to come join us, right? We want the sheriffs, which are the ultimate law of the land. We want them to join us ultimately, right? And the only way to do that is to have full transparency throughout the entire process. I'm done.
I'm showing everybody this. So apparently the podcaster, thanks for bringing this up. And this is why we had the Calexit Congress. And it's a very diverse group of people so that we stay informed of everything going on. So I didn't even know.
Marcus, what I wanted to ask you, I saw that story. What is your opinion of that? Should the Highway Patrol be enforcing free? I don't even know what they're enforcing. I guess they said it was a threat. Should they be enforcing for the federal government, basically for a member of Congress that supposedly felt threatened by what somebody said on Twitter? You think that's right? I think.
I will answer that in 30 seconds. Let me just cover what roughly this is. I'm learning about this right now. So California podcaster gets a visit from police after lightly criticizing AOC on Twitter. A left-wing anti-war activist from California who's pro-LGBTQ. So we're talking about a super lefty, anti-war, pro-LGBTQ guy from California is the guy who got intimidated. Turns out it's true. The Capitol Police called the CHP. They sent plainclothes officers to his thing who were apparently yelling at him. I lightly criticized AOC for a disappointing answer in response to a question about Palestine, Israel. As a result, the police arrived at his arrest. At first, the two officers yelling his name sounded like my Postmates delivery. So they went to his door and started yelling his screen name or something. I felt scared, intimidated, and violated. So here's the actual tweet. Here's the officers from the CHP plainclothes people. I'm shaken right now. I was just visited by two plainclothes police officers. They said they came here on behalf of the Capitol Police and accused me of threatening AOC. So apparently two police officers did show up at his door in plainclothes and said, hey, you threatened a member of Congress, and we were asked by the official Capitol Police to come after you. I assume this is the tweet they are talking about, so he's not even clear, where I lightly criticized AOC for a disappointing answer in response to the question about Israel-Palestine. So I guess he's going as Human Rights Watch leader. Yeah, at Queer a la Mode. By the way, no, blah, 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 LGBTQ friendly here. Just this is what the story says. Her response was incredibly underwhelming, to say the least. So what he said about AOC was her response was underwhelming when she was asked about a political issue as a congressional member. In return, somehow that got the Capitol Police to get the CHP to go and intimidate this guy for threatening a member of Congress. By the way, this guy is not alt-right. He's left, anti-war, LGBTQ, and two cops showed up at his door and said, you just threatened a Congress member.
What was that, Marcus? Marcus, what? That didn't sound like a death threat to me. It was very light criticism, actually. So I mean, this is way out of control by the federal government. I mean, and our state government working together. I mean, this is like pretty crazy. And that's and that guy's actually would be one, and it's a congresswoman from New York from across the other side of the country, for crying out loud.
Yeah. So again, left, LGBTQ pro-California, pro-left, anti-war, pro-good treatment of Palestinians. Now, I believe Israel should exist. I have many Jewish friends, but it's very popular in California to talk about how the Palestinians aren't treated, let's just say, perfectly. I don't want to get into it. That is not a wild anti-Californian opinion. It's not. I don't care who you talk to. Majority of Californians think the Palestinians are being treated right. I'll leave it there. I'm not trying to get into a debate on this or that. I'm just saying this is not radical stuff. So pro-Palestinian, pro-LGBTQ, anti-war, left. And he gets harassed by the cops for threatening AOC. I thought that stuff was only supposed to happen to white nationalists who said, I want to kill you. Now, I'm just learning the story. Maybe it's not that way. Maybe he did make some dastardly tweet. Maybe it is worse. So I'm going to say on the surface, this is definitely an example of America falling apart and intimidation, Nazi level. On the surface. Now, I reserve the right to say oh, this is the real tweet he said, and you got misled. Okay, if you show me some other tweet and it looks horrible, I reserve the right to change my opinion. But on the surface, no. Camby's, Mostafizadeh, and Sam Chaney, two Calexit Congress members from California, who are Californians, I think are right in pointing out this is a dangerous, scary, dangerous development of America that does not seem correct. Leave it there. Comments from the Congress or anyone on YouTube about, is it okay to threaten anti-war, leftist, pro-LGBTQ, pro-being civil rights around the world people as threatening Congress members for simply saying, you could have done a better job on this comment? I thought that was holding political leaders to account. Is it okay to threaten them with cops banging on your door in the middle of the day as plainclothes police officers? Is that a fair response? I'll turn that over to Congress. Looking for people to say no.
Maybe it's just the sci-fi and fantasy nerd in me, but hearing this, I had the Imperial March from Star Wars going in my head the whole time. You know, the Darth Vader and Emperor, you know, evil guy theme song. Yeah, it started up, and I don't know why.
Here, I'm going to post the articles in private chat so Congress members can look for themselves, come to their own opinion. Again, I'm reserving the right to revisit this if new information comes out, but it looks like Camby's is pointing out another example of America ain't working, folks. This is not California values. This is not how we would want things here. Okay. Any other comments on that?
Well, we've seen over in Europe, for example, England. I mean, the cops will go to your house because Facebook post, and looks like that is coming to America now for social media posts. The police will visit you, and it's pretty terrifying, actually. So I guess you better be careful what you say on social media. But I mean, they obviously don't threaten violence, but they're misconstruing something. And like you said, if this is the full context of the story, then they're so far out of line that they're tyrannical maniacs. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it unless we're missing something here.
So I just want to point out real quick, if I may, there was once this man, you may have heard of him, and his name was Barack Obama. And when he was running for a thing called the presidency of America, one of the most famous things he ever said was that America is not the country where you say something and you get a knock on the door from the cops about what you said, as long as it wasn't threatening. Well, that literally happened in California. The opposite of what a presidential candidate who was the most beloved said was what America's about. So apparently what Barack Obama got people in love with him about when he described America don't exist no more. Total opposite of literally what he said in one of his most famous speeches. I mean, damn, Barack said this is America, and we're literally seeing an example of the opposite of that happening. So America no longer exists according to Obama? I mean, he said this is X, this is America. Well, that ain't happening. So was he lying at the time, or that was America and America's now gone? I'll leave it to you to decide. Okay, any other comments about that story? All right, we're going to move on to the Congress votes section where we talk about updates of projects in 30 seconds. Give me 30 seconds and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So we're doing the Calexit Congress portion We've done some great presentations by Robert Stark on how Biden is not bringing unity, Sam Chaney on how the dollar is falling apart for the first time in ways we've never seen before, and NICKOLAS WILDSTAR on how the civil justice system around Officer Chauvin is not civil or just. Those were conversations where real-life Californians talk to you about how America's not working out, because the point of this group is to have the most necessary conversation that Californians should have. What if we have to leave America? You do not have to believe that we should, but you should be asking yourself, what happens if we have to? What then? 1 second, let me take a comment here. Wondering what, Nathan Eddy, thanks for commenting and wondering what our reps in Congress have to say about that door knock on a California by the feds. Thank you, Nathan Eddy. Nathan also says, need to have our own cryptocurrency. Want to thank Michael Reynolds for jumping in, Gawant Mahajan, Shokrula Masawi, Lime Dragons, and Kate Hill, David Thimmel, and Kylie Dooley. Thanks for all jumping in. So what we want to talk about today is the progress that we have made. This group is about having conversations about what if California has to leave the USA, not saying you have to endorse it, but what do we do at that time? Additionally, we're always trying to promote the idea. So right away, I want to talk to you about something awesome that happened recently. I have been asked every single day, who's the most famous person backing Calexit? Now in 2016, 2017, there were many people talking about Calexit. I think Chuck D made a comment, Shervin Pishavar, Peter Thiel, Thomas Middleditch, many stars and many people were talking about Calexit. Even Kamala Harris said, hey, I'm aware of the idea. And Gavin Newsom even mentioned it, although not in a positive manner. So there are many people talking about it. But recently, we've had a dearth of famous people talking about Calexit. Well, that ends now. I'd like to introduce you to someone quite famous. Her name is Adrienne Lawrence. She was on the Young Turks on April 4th on a show called Who Would Be on the California Dollar. She broke I'm sorry, my words are leaving me. Basically, ESPN was having an old boys club and they were sexually harassing everybody. In 2017, she called them out. That was very brave and difficult. She was one of the first person to ever call them out. It's a popular sports network, and she was bashed by many people, but she was right. Adrienne Lawrence is a Californian, and she stood for the right cause in 2017, fighting for a California value against sexual harassment. Now she's talking about, if we were to break away from the union, I'd be down for that. So let's go to minute 435 to 445. I just want to show you this real quick. I think you'll be as happy as I was to see this. Let me show you real quick. I'm going to give you a little bit of context. So.
Oh, yeah. So in LA, like 9 out of 10 people are like, no, bro, I'm from Brooklyn originally, man. Brooklyn's still New York's the best. But, I guess I'm out here for a little while. How long have you been out here? 37 years. That would be some evidence that you think California is better than
Yep. No, I love California. I would dive on a poppy. If someone were going to crush it, I need to crush it first. It's like a grenade. I'm California through and through. And as I always say, if we were to break away from the union, I'd be down for that. I'd even volunteer to be on our new bill, like a dollar bill. I could do that, or maybe it's funny.
There you have it. Famous person, well-known civil rights leader on Young Turks, straight up saying, I'm a California nationalist. I love California. We should be a separate nation. I would like to propose a resolution to the Congress that we nominate her to have her face on the first currency printed in a future independent California. She volunteered. She's famous, well-spoken, Californian, and she even offered the idea. Why don't we back up our conversation we had today about how the US dollar is unstable by taking it a step further and suggesting that California, if it ever were to become independent, is recommended by the Yes California Calexit Congress as having Adrian on our dollar. What do people think? Thoughts, feelings?
Well, I think we should compile like a full list of people, like maybe a dozen, and then have like a ranked choice voting for them, and then have send it out by email or phone of a ranked choice voting by a list of maybe about a dozen suggested by the Congress.
Oh, I am trying to get your name up, and this computer is just getting in my way. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments on someone basically going on TV saying, I'm a California nationalist, let's secede? And what Stank Ugard was talking about was that most people that he's ran into don't say they're California nationalists, but really are. So he was talking about how I talk to people and go, hey, we're Californians. And they're like, yeah, I'm from New Jersey. I'm from Boston. And he goes, really? When was the last time you were there? Oh, 50 years ago. Okay, so you've been here 30 to 40 years, but you're not a Californian, you're really a Bostonian. And he goes, that's the way a lot of people see it. It's ridiculous. So any other comments about that? Yes, Professor.
Don't laugh if I make this proposal. Not necessarily to put someone on a dollar bill, but what about if we have a monarch for independent California? When I first thought of this idea, I laughed. I thought it was silly, but actually there's a very good reason. There was a column recently, I believe it was by Dan Walters, who said that governments that have a monarch run more efficiently for the simple reason that so much of a president's time is taken up with all these ceremonial occasions that when they should be attending to the administration of government. And if you had a monarch, then the monarch could do that, going to funerals, going to openings, cutting ribbons, doing all these kinds of official things. But in California, I think we should do it differently than other countries where their monarchy is inherited. I think we should vote for a monarch. And I use the word monarch as a gender neutral term. Somebody could define themselves as king so-and-so or queen so-and-so. But there might be somebody who's non-gender binary who wants to just be monarch so-and-so.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I'd like to thank you for the idea. I'd like to keep the topic on the thing we're talking about. So Adrian Lawrence.
Just something for us to think about for the future.
Okay. Okay.
Get a celebrity to and do it by voting and have them compete against each other, and then we elect California monarch. We could do that immediately. We don't have to wait until independence.
Okay. So then ideas to nominate a California monarch. I want to repeat the idea originally was, here's a famous person. They're asking to be on the dollar. They're asking to represent the movement. How do we all feel about that concept in itself? Are people pro that, against that? We had a couple of people say that they'd like to have a list of people, of which Adrian could be one, and we would pick.
What's the number one? I'm sorry, Marcus. What's the number one language spoken in California?
Espanol.
Okay, and look, if it was me, I would put Cesar Chavez on the American dollar. It has nothing to do with my political beliefs or anything like that. It's just that you want to look for popular heroes, and when we're talking about popular heroes, let's face it, the number one language spoken in California is Spanish. Probably the number one language spoken in Los Angeles is Spanish. And that's just a reality that, see, when we talk about California, we talk about multiculturalism, but we forget that in 1846, California was annexed from Mexico, right? And then 1848 in Sutter's Creek, they said they found gold. 1849, it became official. And then they built the railroad to bring all the workers to settle that land. right? But it's really Spanish land. I have friends in San Jose. Not long ago, like 70 years ago, 80 years ago, their lands were taken in San Jose, and they were taken, they're annexed, right? Just like the port of Los Angeles was annexed, right? All of California was annexed, right? So no matter what, you know, all these different cultures, I'm Iranian American. I lived in Los Angeles for 30 years of my life, but still, you have to know Spanish to get anything done in California. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so we have an idea that let me get this up. I'm sorry, real quick. We have an idea to create a monarch. We have an idea to create a list of people for a currency, and we have an idea for recommending someone who can be on the more specifically celebrated. I'm sorry, but I got to bring up the point here. A famous person backed up the idea of California being a nation. I really think our conversation should focus on that, because that hasn't happened in 3 years. Jason Wright.
Yeah, so I would be for a committee being formed to really, you know, dissect, analyze, look into all of this. I love that she has come out in support and even volunteered herself to be on the first California national currency note. I would like to point out that we as the Calexit Congress have little to no influence and or say over, you know, California's government creating a currency, maintaining it, what it would look like, right? If any of that was to happen, obviously we the people would have to be presented with some sort of legislative measure and then vote to approve it. And that's not just us, the Calexit Congress, that's all of California. That's 40 million or, you know, like 21, 22 million registered voters. That being said, there are some nations that don't put people's faces at all on any of their currency whatsoever.
Yeah,
and I kind of like that. Yeah.
Robert, you had a comment?
Oh yeah, that is that. The thing about public figures is a public figure, historical or modern, could be divisive because there's always going to be people who dislike that figure. But we could just be a currency that just focuses like California landmarks like Yosemite, Golden Gate Bridge, and because of public figure,
Exactly, our heritage sites and whatnot.
Yeah.
I'll just ask a question. So we have nobody, no one who's famous and is talking about how maybe California should be a nation. Why not just promote her when we have literally no other options?
Well, right now it's purely hypothetical. I think promoting her could be good PR for the Congress if it gets media coverage, and it very well could. I think it could if it's promoted on Twitter.
I think she would be excited to be the first queen of California. So offer her that as an opportunity.
Okay.
So I'd like to say I do like that she has volunteered and all of that. And that makes me feel that we should reach out to her, and whether she becomes a member of the Calexit Congress or not, we should definitely include her on this topic and, you know, like I said, form a committee to really dissect and analyze this. Do we feel that California needs its own currency? And if so, how would we go about it, right? How would we go about proposing some sort of, you know, legal measure to instate that? And then what would it look like, right? All of that. Let's reach out to her and see if we can bring her in all in depth.
Now, Marcus, isn't it already on the books in California here that we can have an alternative currency to the dollar? I think that's on the books here, right?
It is not legal for us to make. Well, hold on. Give me 1 second to put this comment up, and then I can answer that. It's kind of a complex.
But as far as yeah, I mean, we need to reach out to her and get her to come on our show here to our meeting and hear what she has to say about it, if she would be interested in being a public face celebrity for this Yes California movement.
Yeah, we can definitely reach out to her. I'm just saying we can go ahead and use her in this role anyways. She outed herself on TV. She is famous. She is on Young Turks. That is a policy show that most young Californians watch. It's the most famous policy show in California. She's a permanent host on there. She's also famous amongst all minorities for suing ESPN. She's known amongst all sports stars. So she's known amongst sports stars and males under 35 years of age, and she's known amongst all Californians who are under 35 years of age for the most popular policy show. And she literally this week said, I'm a California nationalist and we should secede. We don't have any other option even remotely close to that. So I'm suggesting that we celebrate her statement and promote her. One way to promote her and to get attention would be to back up the idea she suggested. She said, hey, put my face on the currency. If we do that, then we can get into the media cycle she already started. And because we're picking up on ideas she suggested, we're more likely to get her to pick up on it. So that's what I was saying. This is huge. We should just move to adopt her idea and then reach out to her, because we're increasing the chances of her being happy and the news picking up on this. And she's already outed herself enough. We don't need her permission to say this is a California nationalist. She said it for us. So let's kick it to the resolution committee. The resolution committee meets Tuesday at 7. We have the heads of the resolution committee, Robert Stark and Jason Wright here. Robert and Jason as heads of the committee, may we have your permission to move this discussion to Tuesday at 7 and work it out there? Is that acceptable to the two committee heads?
Yeah.
The issues committee?
The Tuesday night, 7 p.m. committee, whatever it's called.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I mean, we do a lot of resolutions, yes, but that's not our only thing, right? But yes, I am totally up for that as well.
Robert, as committee head, do you also approve?
Yeah.
Okay. Tuesday at 7, that's this Tuesday at 7. You can join us on StreamYard. We'll have our resolutions committee meeting, which is technically the international issues and domestic issues approved joint committee by the two heads, which merge into one committee, and we tacitly call it the resolutions committee because a lot of resolutions come from there. We will propose the resolution of, should we propose a separate California currency in the event that we become independent, and should Adrian Lawrence be one of the possible candidates to be on that currency? If you want to oppose to that idea. Okay, great. We'll do that Tuesday. Okay, let me get your comment up. All right, let me post this comment real quick from the professor. By the way, I believe Congress members who are in StreamYard, if you go to comments, not private chat, comments, not private chat, comments, and type it in there, I think I can directly grab it and post it directly. So I think so.
Okay.
But let me make this banner and get the professor up. A lot of people like the idea of landmarks on paper currency. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm just pointing out that publicity-wise, when somebody famous says, I'll do X, if you do X, they're going to cover you.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just leave it there. Okay, moving on. Thanks, everybody. We're going to go to the next section, which is Dewank Mahajan and the YesCAL creating an altcoin. So I am not an expert on Bitcoin. Dewank Mahajan is a data programmer out of India. He's Californian, or he studies here in California. He's a member of the Calexit Congress. We are going to have a, and this idea was proposed by actually NICKOLAS WILDSTAR, and I ran it by Alistair Caithness, and then it's being done by Dewank Mahajan. So the idea started with a Calexit member, I ran it by another Calexit Congress member, and then it went to a third Calix Congress member who's doing it. It's called a NFT, a non-fungible token. So Bitcoin is a created currency that has value, and you can buy and sell things with it. Additionally, there's something using similar technology where you're making a piece of artwork that people can also buy. It's called an NFE, non-fungible. So what we want to do is take the Yes California logo and have it created as an NFT so that people could buy and sell it, not as a Bitcoin, but as a pseudo Bitcoin, so that we could be seen as people who are aware of the issues and moving on current trends and, trying to do cutting edge stuff. DeWonk has already met with a programmer out of Vietnam and is close to picking the programmer who will actually make this coin. He will be doing a lot of the final work on it for free as a volunteer. We will have to pay the programmer, and I already have $150 lined up to send to DeWonk to send to the programmer, and then he'll take care of the rest of it. And we should have a YesCAL coin logo that Bitcoin people are able to talk about. There were some sports teams doing that, and we're hoping to get into the media cycle with that. Any comments or thoughts about that?
Marcus, yeah, just, we're 7 years ago now. In 2014, Jerry Brown, governor then of California, did make it legal to use Bitcoin and other alternative currencies for transactions in the state of California.
Yeah, he did. That was the answer I was going to give you.
That's what the question I was asking you, because it was in the back of my head, but I looked it up right now, and so it's all legal, and we should take full advantage of it if we want to decouple from the U.S. dollar.
So there is a law that was passed saying California can make its own currency. What they were talking about was regional currencies, not necessarily a California-wide alternative to the dollar, but if you're in Fresno County and you get 10 shops to get together and say, we recognize forks as $1 in Fresno County amongst these 10 shops, that you could basically use forks as your own currency and use it locally. That's been around, but nobody's jumped on it. So it is.
And Marcus, I want to say that it's just extremely empowering, and it went over everybody's head. People, we need to seriously consider taking advantage of the opportunity that we have here. It's extremely empowering.
I think that's why this should go to the resolution committee, because I think, we just had people talk about in a totally separate conversation that it is wrong that the U.S. dollar is based upon violence and intimidation and threats of violence for an overinflated value. Then today, 2 other people said literally the same thing. So when we have multiple Congress members saying something, we usually need to move on a resolution. So that's multiple people saying they don't like the way the U.S. dollar is formatted with its overinflated value, and they wouldn't want a future California currency, should it happen, to ever do that. That's part of a resolution. On top of that, we're talking about, well, who could be on that dollar, and maybe being able to put landmarks or Cesar Chavez or in Spanish or something to show real California values. So these are ideas coming together, which is perfect. That's why we made this Congress consensus. We don't always have to disagree. Many of us have different ideas, but I am feeling a consensus. It does seem multiple people are looking around going, if California was going to have its own currency, it shouldn't be based upon violence, and it should represent California. That's what I'm hearing. That sounds like a resolution. So Tuesday at 7, come and see us. We'll get into it in the weeds, as we say, and we'll have a super detailed conversation on that. Join us this Tuesday at 7, for the Joint International Domestic Issues, aka Resolution Committee, headed by Robert Stark and Jason Wright. Okay.
Can I say a couple of quick things?
Yeah.
So, first off, I think that this gives our committee for Tuesdays, the Issues Committee, a clear mandate to come up with a resolution. So on Tuesday, we should form a resolution, or at least a draft of it, that we can present to Congress next Sunday and see what Congress thinks of it. And if it's approved, then the action that we can take for the approved resolution would be to form a committee or a panel looking into very specifically just this need for currency. My other loose suggestion, I'm not sure if DeWonk is still on the line with us, but California was conquered through the use of finding gold here. And though gold is higher in value and, a little more lucrative, profitable, yada, yada, to be basing a currency on, silver is a little bit easier. It's less valued, but it's not so hard to get, right? I know of a refiner who uses both chemical and electro refinery to basically make in what he calls investment grade crystalline silver. He makes it pretty much atomically pure. He also sells it on eBay. He'll melt down all that silver crystal into bars and sell it on eBay. So that might be a good place for us to start for the physical tokens, right? Just like Bitcoin, there are physical tokens and there's the online trading of it. Same with the dollar, right? We have physical dollars in our pockets, but we also have like credit cards and bank cards, debit cards and whatnot. And that's all electronic transaction of those paper dollars. So to have physical currency, I would suggest we do it on silver, make our currency coin out of silver and use this super high grade stuff that's fairly easy to acquire.
Thank you. I want to kick that great comments. I want to kick that super detailed comments to Tuesday night at 7. So please join us Tuesday night. We're going to get into a super in-depth conversation of how exactly we package this as a resolution.
Perfect.
Any other comments, Jason? Jason?
No. I'm looking forwd to this. That's my comment.
I'm sorry. Just people tell me, hey, don't get into the weeds on the show. Kick it to the committees. So I'm trying to do what the Congress says. Blah 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 blah. Thanks, Jason. Jason Wright, head of the Joint Domestic and International Issues Committee, aka where most of the resolutions come out. Please join us this Tuesday. And as you can see, we're already having a lot of opinions with really informed people. Join us Tuesday. Tuesday at 7, isn't that right, Robert, Stark, and Jason? This Tuesday at 7?
Yes.
Ooh-ah. I mean,
all right.
Yeah.
So Jason and Robert are there. Sounds good. Okay, moving on to the next update. Here we go. We are going to release online secession certifications for classes here soon by Yes California. We had approval. This resolution was proposed last week and it was approved by the Congress this week that we can offer these online courses. Let me take a second to show you what we'll be doing. 1 second. Okay. One second while I get this together. Boom, share, use share screen. Vacation window. Perfect. Okay, so the Calexit Institute online courses will offer these: secession and the Constitution, self-determination in the modern world, California, how it was conquered and the path to statehood, and California on the world stage. So we worked on some of these titles. These are the ones that seem to be what we're coalescing to. We had some very long titles, but these were shortened because it's the way that courses are typically offered with short titles. So let's take a look at what those courses are going to be. So secession and the Constitution is going to talk about the Civil War, how it did not solve the topic of secession, how Texas versus White, the Supreme Court case, did, how the Supreme Court is the official arm to settle legal disputes, not the president and not war, and how the fact that you made something just because the Constitution doesn't say you can't do it doesn't mean you can't do it. If the Constitution's silent, that doesn't mean anything. We'll also talk about the unique power of California to propose laws here with our ballot initiatives that are not something that most of the world or other states or America has. Looking at self-determination in the modern world, we'll talk about the academic study from, I believe it was a Canadian university that talked about legal secession movements, and that once you pass a vote threshold, you go from, once the public says they want to secede, to actually doing it is about 3 to 5 years. So legal modern secession movements, once you have a legal vote, typically happen within a few years. We'll also talk about the United Nations Article 22. That's the one that guarantees the right of self-determination. We'll talk about the interpretation of the UN Article 22, and that basically what it says is that anybody who is colonized has the right to become independent or secede if they are pursuing decolonization. We will also talk about Kosovo and the talk by a Californian, Bridget Coggins, who says that basically there is no rule for becoming a nation. It's if you can get recognized, and you can do that by any way at all. There's no actual standard in the modern world. Then we'll talk about modern secession movements: Texas, Hawaii, New Caledonia, Catalonia, Hong Kong, Greenland, Kurdistan, and Quebec, rounding out self-determination in the modern world. Finally, we'll go, next we'll go to California, the path to statehood. Basically, California was an independent nation for Mexico and America for about 10 years, according to the top historian in California, Karen McWilliams. Americans came in as illegal immigrants, illegally. Then they violently overthrew the government, gunned down all the Latinos who disagreed, and shot down all the African Americans and Latinos and indigenous people and Asians who didn't like it. They then set up a white supremacist state under a dictatorship, and all of that is illegal according to the UN under modern law, and that was how California became a state. Finally, California on the world stage. Whether you like the idea of Calexit or not, this is going to talk about how well California could do if it was to become independent, something that this is the most important conversation for Californians to have. We'll talk about the global recognition of Calexit 2017, 2018. We'll talk about leaders in California who declared California as a nation state, global acceptance by France and Germany, Russia, China, Japan of California as an independent state, especially France. We'll talk about the optimum size of nations, the academic study that's looked into that, especially the size of nations by 2 Italian professors. We'll also be looking at what scholars and academics suggested that California become independent, such as Mr. Al Perovitz, Patricia Morrison, Paul Sorobin, and Richard Boskin. We'll also talk about what did the popular press admit about California's strengths if it was to become a nation, and its weaknesses. So basically, this is a course that will provide online certification. And so say someone takes a study, they take the course, Self-Determination in the Modern World, online course. Here's a little graphic for Calexit Institute, all provided by Yes California. Now, we're not saying that you have to back independence, but what we wanted to do was encourage Californians to have this conversation and see it as something they must be doing. Providing courses backed by facts and citations that are telling the truth and not telling you what to believe, but providing facts, is definitely in line with the Congress and something that we would have permission to do. This is roughly the outline. We'll talk about secession in the Constitution, how legal it is to secede in America. We'll talk about secession movements around the world, how legal it is for other countries to secede. We'll talk about how California was actually a nation and it was violated, and that gives constitutional rights to become independent. And finally, we'll talk about if California was independent, how well would it do on the world stage. So that is the Calexit course. Comments, thoughts, or feelings from anyone in the Congress or anyone on YouTube? Any comment at all? Jason, I'm going to pick on you. Jason Wright, what do you think about the courses? You've really been helping me out. How do you feel about this idea, sir? I'm sorry to pick on you, but I need your brain sometimes to fill in for my gray matter. I'm old.
Yeah, no, I'm honored that you picked me for such a task. It shows that you have faith in my abilities. So thank you.
A lot of faith. Jason.
I think one of my personal favorite topics is how California will benefit like the world by being independent. It's something that I've been talking about for many a year now with folks. That and the UN guidelines that clearly lay out that we have this right, and the fact that, you know, America has signed that thing, and by America's structural rule of law, that thing takes precedent over even the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So, you know, we definitely have that right. I think it's really good for people to get the crash course on that. But again, my favorite part is just how awesome it could be for the entire world, especially those who find themselves in need of anything at any point in time. How awesome this truly could be for the world if we really do regain our independence.
Cade Hill, I want to say thank you, Jason. Cade Hill says, did you guys look at WP courseware for online course creation? We have not, Cade Hill, but Cade Hill, we're gonna. Thanks for jumping in. Other comments on this course software, things you like, things you don't like? Anyone here in Congress or anyone on YouTube, you can comment. We'll post it directly to the show. Anyone here in Congress?
Did you receive my email, Marcus, where I made my additions?
I did not. I can look for that. I can look for that now. Let me take a look. What were some of your suggestions, Professor, just since we have you right here?
Another academic study is Professor Buckley's book, American Secession. And he talks about California very specifically in terms of being an independent nation. I wrote a review of that Hannah Miyamoto posted in her website.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? What do people like? What do people not like? What would they like to?
I thought it was very good.
Oh, there it is. Here's from the professor. In the section Secession in the Constitution, I can add intensive knowledge of Southern Secession 1860, line 5, what is federal AG, Attorney General. Yes, Professor, we will definitely want your help. In the section on self-determination, line 5, add Scotland Secession in modern line, Buckley American Secession. We absolutely can do that. I am now reading Juan Alvarado, Governor of California, by Gilbert Royal, University of Oklahoma. That's perfect, Professor. Yes, we definitely want you in on this. This is available for every single person who wants to join in, and I will include you after this. Here's some of the suggestions from the professor. One of the books that he's looking at, Juan Alvarado, Governor of California, really covers that quite well. Definitely, Professor. I'll bring you in after this, and for the courses, that's great. Also, I've had Professor Brown also look at this coursework. So we've had two professors, Williams and Brown, both look at this course and roughly said, looks good. Additionally, we're talking to more people, but I'll get the professor involved in more detailed discussion. This is coming soon. Any other comments on that? Or we'll move on? Okay. Moving on to the last section. We're almost done. So, yes, California is going to be publishing a book to, I was told not to use the word scare, to make liberals feel not safe about the stability of the USA. So there are many conservative books out there who cherry pick information, come at it from one side, and terrify conservatives that liberals will take over the country and ruin everything for them. In fact, in the last year, there's been like 5 books on secession for conservatives. So there's clearly a market for secession. But all the books except for one by Richard Kreitner are for conservatives on what they gain from secession. And Richard Kreitner, while a liberal and writing a book for liberals, didn't actually suggest that liberals support secession, he just explained that it's unfair to say only right-wing people support this. And he provided a history lesson of people on the left. Now, Yes, California has been mentioned in 2 different secession books. Professor Buckley's book, mentioned by Professor Williams. So Francis H. Buckley wrote a book and mentioned Yes, California. And Richard Kreitner in his book also mentioned Yes, California. So what we wanted to do was build on that market. There's clearly a market for secession books. Yes, California has a brand recognition in 2 different secession books. We do have professors here, and we do have a partnership with Liberty Block. And so what Liberty Block suggested, Elliot Axman's a Congress member here, that we make a book for liberals. Basically the Fox News treatment, but for liberals. Hey, conservatives are going to steal elections, lie, trick, steal elections, get in there, take over power, and take over all your rights. Is that 100% fair and balanced? No. Are we going to lie? No. Will we use only hard citations? Correct. But is it going to be from a particular vantage point? Correct. Now, many of you have brought up, hey, Marcus, Yes, California is the only Calexit group out there reaching out to conservatives in America because we want their votes and we're dedicated to peaceful secession. And we better not jeopardize it. Well, I heard you loud and clear, which is why Yes, California is publishing this with Liberty Block. Liberty Block is a known conservative organization. They just published a book for conservatives about how liberals are going to take over America and ruin everything for them. So Liberty Block has agreed to work with Yes, California to publish the opposite book for liberals. So in fact, while we're slamming conservatives in this book, I have talked to many conservatives and they all understand Californians we drink the Kool-Aid out here. And they already have a particular image of the world. You're not going to convince them to think about Republicans in a fair and balanced manner, so don't even try. All of my conservative colleagues across America get that. We're also working with the conservative in America to publish this book. So we are showing, Yes, California, we will work with conservatives, we respect them, and we're going to do a good job. Additionally, this person has conservative credentials and already published the conservative version of this book. But this book is basically designed for hardcore lefty liberals, saying if you're a lefty liberal, watch out because they could steal elections, rig it, and then take away all your votes. All of that's technically true. It's just that when you add nuance and additional facts and yeah, but they'd have to do this, this, and that, it becomes more toned down. So we're not doing that. This is a get liberals motivated to back secession by showing them the worst possible case. Now, we're not going to lie, but it is certainly factored in the third direction. Let me show you a little bit of what this looks like, just so that you can see. Okay, so here's the working title, How the Republican Party Will Steal Elections in the Near Future and Take Away All Your Rights. You care dearly for California. Obviously, it's a working title. It's going to be published jointly by Liberty Block and written in partnership with YesCAL Congress. Liberty Block, YesCAL. Here are additional titles we're looking at. We're asking everybody if they want to get involved that the sections in bold black are saying roughly what the chapters should get at. A lot of the book's already written out, at least in draft. The extra large blue section is the titles of the book. The red sections are what needs to be written out. So let me show you. Here's roughly the introduction. We already have section 2 written out. What you can see is this regular font is already written. This light colored stuff is not written, but these are quick chapters. This section 3 is already written. These parts are not. This part is written. So if you want to get involved, you can jump in on the Google Doc. We're already putting this together. It's already in draft format. So there's the title. This is already written. We have 4 different people overlooking this plain text and editing it. So those people are editing the text as it's already done. The people who are writing it are not redoing the section. It's already done. Only editors are looking at that. We ask if you get involved, you stick to that. Again, a lot of this is already written. Red sections are sections we need to jump on, finish fleshing out, or provide examples. So a lot of the red section is we just need examples to prove the point. We already know the point we're making. It just needs to be written out. As you can see, a lot of the book is already here. Here's some of the sections that need to be written, additionally, etc. So most of the book's already there. It's already done. Again, we'd invite everybody in the Calexit Congress to be part if you want to. We're not changing the premise of the book. You can certainly jump in as either an editor, where you're editing the text that's already written and it'll be final, or as a writer, where you're helping to write the red sections. I got to tell you, every time I mention this, we get more people who want to be part. So this is coming together quickly. It's going to be published very soon. Now's the time to jump in. Email me at marcus.ruiz.evans if you'd like to be part. Kicking it back to the Congress for any comments about this book. Comments.
I want to make a comment. I want to make it. Can you hear my voice?
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. As you know, my degree is in political science. I was a candidate for Los Angeles City Council in 2011. I just want to say that I've lived in California for 30 years of my life. California is not that is not that liberal that you think it is. Okay, and I don't even want to point out to the conservatives. California. Do you ever watch Bill Maher? Bill Maher. Bill Maher is a regressive left. That's what most Californians are. They're regressive left. Okay, so look at the #1 employer in Los Angeles. Who is it? Boeing, right? USC, Kaiser Permanente. Everything that's tied to the military-industrial complex. Where I grew up was Woodland Hills, the San Fernando Valley. I went to Taft High School, Pierce College, all that. Everything there was a medical company or it was a military-industrial company, Rocketdyne, Northrop Grumman. So we tend to look at California as being ultra.
I think we lost Camby's, but he'll be back. So I think what Camby's is saying is California is not as super lefty as some portray it. Okay. Any other comments? We'll come back to Camby's as soon as he comes in. Anybody have comments on the book? Yeah,
I would just like to agree with what Camby's was saying there. I have found average Californians to be more middle of the road kind of, hey, for sensible legislation, not saying, no government at all, but not saying the government needs to dictate every moment of everyone's life either, sensible, middle of the road. And that's how most average Californians strike me. Not so much a lefty or a righty, just, Californian.
Thanks, Jason. Any other comments? Sam, Professor?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a one-party rule in the state, Democrat majority in our legislature, if they're even functioning, which they are quasi-functioning through COVID. So you're not going to get any type of I would say not corrupt rule when you have a one-party state. And so I feel like throw your political parties out the window. We got one-party state rule, and it's not good if it's from the right or the left.
Okay, Camby's. We got your back, brother. What were you saying?
Yes. Yes. What I was saying is that most Californians are very regressive left. Okay, so they're okay with the empire, right? They're okay with 1,000 military bases overseas. They're okay with the empire as long as everything functions as normal. Everybody's okay with the empire. Keep building, the military-industrial complex. Look, just recently, you can pull up this article. The military-industrial complex is going to sue the Biden administration if he pulls out Afghanistan. Okay, so the military-industrial complex is vital not only to Colorado, not only to Vermont, but most importantly to California, where you have these major military-industrial complex contractors. And don't forget, it's the womb to the tomb. right? You're born in a hospital, you're educated in a university, right? Then you're sent to war, and then they put you back in a hospital, right? Kaiser Permanente, USC, right? These are the major employers in California, right? It's the womb, right, to the tomb, right? So they, right? So Kaiser Permanente, Boeing, right? Northrop Grumman. Look at the defense minister of Biden. Who's Biden's defense minister? He's on the board of directors of Raytheon. Everywhere in the news, what are they talking about? Raytheon stock is going up. The first thing that Biden did is he invaded Syria. He invaded Syria. Why? Because his defense minister, which is the first black defense minister in the history of the United States, decides to drop missiles on poor brown people in Syria. Right?
Well said.
That's how you get the. So California is dependent on the military-industrial complex, and the liberals are not so liberal. They're more regressive left. Look at Bill Maher. He's a regressive left. I'm done.
Sam, Jason?
It's outrageous. It's outrageous what he said, and I think it was very profound. You know, cradle to grave, Kaiser to Kaiser. That is the sad state of affairs. And yeah, if you really truly are liberal, quote liberal, then I thought we used to be against war. But you know, I used to. Hey, people say I'm conservative, whatever, libertarian. I just want to be a free person. Honestly, I'm tired of all the labels. But I mean, I don't see it. It's like when your guy gets in, then we just turn a blind eye to that, right? And so people know I supported Trump, but I'm critical of Trump. I mean, he made a lot of mistakes, did a lot of things I didn't like, and so I would appreciate reciprocation from people, quote, on the left, that when your guy gets in there, then you don't just blindly say everything's roses. You have some constructive criticism about reality here, okay? And so if you can't say that when your side's in power that they do some wrong things, then I think you're being disingenuous and dishonest, honestly. And that's my position here.
Yeah. Let me show you guys something real quick. I think you may like this. So, talking about disingenuous. So, obviously, in my opinion, there was a coup in the Capitol on January 6th. And the Democrats proposed legislation to criticize all of the Republicans who helped incite the violence for members of the Capitol, going, hey, you're a Congress member. You can't incite violence. That's bad and wrong. You should not do that. But here's the thing. One of the people pursuing this resolution is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was part of the lying to the American public that their vote counted and rigging the Democratic primary, which she admitted in a federal court case in Florida for Hillary Clinton. So Debbie Wasserman Schultz lied to the American public, rigged the Democratic primary, admitted so in court, and now she's saying you Republicans didn't follow proper format. It's violence, and that's backward and wrong.
Marcus, who did they rig it against? Was it old Bernie Sanders?
That's what I'm saying. So you got one of the people who was involved in rigging the thing against Bernie Sanders going, look at those evil Republicans. They rigged the thing against them. You rigged the thing. Why can't you apologize for your actions? And you're one of two people calling the other people? Wow. Wow.
And here's the thing.
Wow.
They wanted to shape a narrative with the Capitol riots because there were BLM organizers who were arrested there. Here's the thing. Certain members of Congress have aligned themselves with Antifa and BLM. Certain members of Congress are aligned with far-right groups, okay? That's just what it is, okay? In Europe, it's the same thing. In the US, it's the same thing. Look, the very first book in the history of the United States written about Antifa was written by me. You can go search it on Amazon. It's called American Antifa, Okay, thank you. Right, but
are you Antifa?
Am I Antifa? No.
Yeah.
Right? Am I anti-fascist? Absolutely. I hope we're all anti-fascist, right? But I really want to talk about what created fascism, what led to the U.S. becoming fascist, right? But you know, not to get into all that, I want to say that super patriotism, right? And the U.S. Army talked about this. They said super patriotism is the reason behind fascism, right? Because when people get, it's mob mentality. Me and you, Sam, we let's say we think completely different. Me and you can't have mob mentality because we think differently than each other, right? But we still sit on this board and we reach some type of consensus that's neither. That's how it's supposed to work. You understand, my friend? But like, it's not about being left or right. We're all anti-fascist. That's why the U.S. Army went and fought Hitler in Germany. It's to shut down fascism. Right? We don't agree with fascism. We don't agree with that type of life. You don't want, you know, Nazi World War II rule. You don't want mobs running in the street killing each other because somebody looks different. We don't want to create an ethno-state. What we want to create is a consensus that represents the beautiful multiculturalism that California is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I would like to point out for any viewers or listeners that literally Adolf Hitler saw that back then, when Hitler was alive, he saw that the United States was going extreme nationalist and therefore leaning towards fascism. So the fact that, you know, 60, 80 years later, it seems to now be, you know, that the Galactic Senate has been reorganized into the first Galactic Empire under now Emperor Palpatine. You know, don't be so surprised. Hitler himself saw it that long ago.
Sorry, you guys are laying out some real wisdom here.
You know, I used to listen to Alex Jones like 8 hours a day, right? I used to listen to Alex Jones 10 hours a day. I love Alex Jones, InfoWars, all that. He gets a lot of things wrong, and that has to do with his lack of education. He doesn't read enough books. He doesn't expand his worldview enough. But I literally love that guy like 8 to 10 hours a day. But when Trump bombed Syria, go watch what Alex Jones said about him. Alex Jones was really upset because he was like, it's over. You know, he sold out to the swamp. And here's the thing. We all want to change DC. You can't change DC. DC changes you. You don't change DC. DC changes you. And that's what happens, right? So Trump went there and he really had a plan. He was like, and let me tell you something. There's a lot of people who hate Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon was the only honest guy in the Trump administration. He had all the campaign promises of Trump written on a wall, and he was going through them one by one, making sure Trump actually did them. So it was way different, and they kicked him out. He was the only honest guy because he lost to the liberal New York clique that was run by Ivanka and Jared Kushner, who were New York liberals. Jared Kushner is a New York liberal. Jared Kushner is not a conservative, okay? Jared Kushner is invested in Israel. He's about the money because Israel's one of the biggest gigantic, you know, settlements, you know, that he's invested in. He's actually invested money in that. So is his father, right? They're New York liberals, though. That's why they got rid of Steve Bannon, because Steve Bannon was coming with a completely different view. They wanted to be globalists. Steve Bannon wanted to be a nationalist. There's nothing wrong with nationalism. It's that when ultra-nationalism leads to ethnocentrism, right? And then the thought of creating an ethnocentric state, there's nothing wrong with being nationalist. Oh, we're California nationalists, right? We love California, we're California nationalists, right? So there's nothing wrong with being a California nationalist. It's when we create an exclusive environment where it's just me against them. It's us against them. That's the problem with nationalism and super patriotism, is that it leads to an ethnocentric worldview where no one else can be accepted.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out a great example of a way to be about national identity is the way that Scotland has done it. So the Queen of England's husband just died, right? He was 99. He was in and out of the hospital recently, but Prince Philip just died. And though Scotland is pursuing independence, all reasonable assumptions say Scotland is going to no longer be part of the United Kingdom by, the year's end.
Right.
Still, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister of Scotland, still paid respect to someone who is technically their overlord, right? It's not a we're Scottish and we want to be Scottish and so we hate you. It's we don't hate you, but we are our own people and we need to do our thing. But we don't hate you.
Right. Absolutely. I've been to Scotland, and these Scottish people are very nationalistic. And I was in the airport. I flew to Aberdeen, Scotland, and I actually met with oil executives. And the North Sea is where all the oil rigs are in Scotland. So I stayed in Aberdeen, Scotland for 1 week, and I bought a book on Robert the Bruce. And I met these fantastic people. They took me to these fantastic pubs and so forth. And I just want to say that when I was traveling back to go to England, I was in the airport in Scotland, and the Scottish guy walked up, and the ports, like the airports, the police are English. So the guy was like, "Where are you from?" And the Scottish guy was like, "What do you care?" Literally like non-compliance all the way. The Scottish are like non-compliance all the way. They don't take that crap. And they're like very in your face. And Scottish people are kind of tough guys, I'll tell you. It's like one of the people you don't want to get in a fist fight with is a Scottish guy. You know what I mean? They're tough guys, you know what I mean? English are tough guys too, but Scottish are even more. They're to the north and they're really tough. So they're complete non-compliance, and they're very nationalistic. And I don't want to say that their society is not inclusive. Their society is inclusive as much as it could be, okay? But England took on a completely different role, which it centered itself as an international center for finance. Because England became an international center for finance, it had to accept a lot more multiculturalism, whereas Scotland didn't.
Are you muted, Marcus?
I muted myself. Sorry. Comments? Wow, you guys are on fire. Comments to Professor Williams, Jason, or Sam? Okay, Jason or Professor Williams. Comments about Scotland and how mega awesome it is?
Yeah, I liked that Camby's was pointing out that the oil rigs are all up there in the North Sea. Another big issue that Scots have is they're very much anti-nuclear proliferation, like their general consensus as a people, the way they vote. And it turns out that the United Kingdom almost exclusively stores its nukes in Scotland.
That's
why,
jacked.
why don't they want to have nuclear bombs and missiles, say, you know, within a stone's throw of Parliament in, you know, London or Surrey, right? Well, that's because they know how dangerous that is, and they choose to stash it all up in Scotland, showing kind of, you know, a lack of care, kind of a blatant disregard for the will of the people there.
They don't even
And
like
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
and you notice the attitude, and you notice the general attitude when the during the coronavirus, right? When the English went to Scotland to hide out during the coronavirus, and the Scottish were literally kicking them out of villages.
Yeah, yeah. We actually we noticed here in the Bay Area in California, the moment that the transportation lines, international transportation lines, were opened up again, even though things were still technically locked down, the first flight into California from overseas was from England. It was British Airways flight, and just a month later, someone that I personally know contracted the UK variant of coronavirus. Now, this is months ago, and they're finally getting around to saying, yes, there is a UK variant. It is super duper contagious, and yeah, it's already here. Well, you know, maybe we should have been a little more like Scotland and said, hey, do you not realize that the plague is going around? You can shelter in place in your home. Don't come to my home to do it.
Yeah, apparently Scotland has not been happy about England storing all their nuclear weapons in Scotland, and they've been complaining about that for years. Politically, they're not aligned with it, whereas the British people are on the idea of having nukes in the first place, and they're all stored there. So it's really a double insult for them. Thanks for bringing that up, Jason. It's a real travesty. And I love seeing consensus. I love it. Okay, any other comments? Okay, well, I'm going to end the live broadcast. You don't have to go if you don't want to. This just ends the show that's recorded. You can take off, or you can have free discussion to your heart's content. Let me end the live broadcast. You don't have to go if you don't want to. Sam.
Right. Bye-bye.
Oh, Sam. Okay, all right.
No, just saying bye. Good,
Okay.
great show. Glad everybody showed up. A lot of great information. Love you guys.
Love you guys. Love you. Okay, let me do this. This was the Calexit Congress, and I'm going to brand.